When a 17-year-old boy was found dead under unusual circumstances, the truth behind his death is strongly disputed by some, who to this day, blindly prefer a convenient lie. January 10, 2013, began like any other day for Valdosta teenager Kendrick Johnson. It was the second day back at Lowndes High School after Christmas break, and 17-year-old Kendrick had a full day of classes scheduled with plans to go to a freshman basketball game that evening. But Kendrick never turned up for a weightlifting class that afternoon, nor did he return home in the evening as expected. It was 9:30 p.m. before his mother, Jackie, really began to worry. Kendrick always called when he was going to be home late. After driving back and forth between home and school with still no sign of her son, Jackie called the police at around 12:30 a.m. to report him missing. On Friday, January 11th, at about 10 a.m., a group of students arrived at the gym for a class. They began to fill in a survey given to them by their coach, when someone noticed a pair of white socks sticking out of one of several upright rolled-up wrestling mats that were stored in the corner. Curious as to how they had ended up there, one of the students stood up on the bleachers for a better view. With horror, they realized that it wasn't just a pair of socks, it was a person. Their coach, Philip Pipelo, frantically began to overturn the mats so he could get to the student, who was in one of the mats that were up against the wall, knocking a shoe and some books to the floor in the process. While a student called 911, Pipelo attempted to pull the person out of the mat but quickly realized that they were too late. Police and medical personnel were dispatched, and the school was locked down at around 11 that morning. 21 hours after being reported as missing, Kendrick Johnson's body was found. Police quickly set to work to try and find out how this could have happened. There were several security cameras dotted around the school, and police tracked down and interviewed every student who visited the gym that Thursday and Friday. From statements and security footage, police were able to confirm that Kendrick had been to classes that morning and had walked into the gym at 1:09 p.m. Though there were several cameras in the gym, none were in a position to capture Kendrick's final moments. Instead, they show him walking off to the right-hand corner of the gym, the place where the mats were stored. Other students appear on CCTV entering the gym just minutes later. But sadly, by then, it was already too late. After they spoke to the other students, the police discovered that some of them used the mats to store their belongings as a way to avoid paying a charge for a locker. Kendrick and another student shared a pair of shoes that they would keep in the mats so they could each take turns wearing them. The wrestling mats were usually stored on their side, allowing Kendrick and his friend to reach in and grab the shoes easily. But over the Christmas break, they had been turned vertically, and placed in a group next to the wall. Police concluded that in his haste, Kendrick climbed over several vertical mats to reach the one with his shoes, instead of moving them out of the way. Unable to tilt the mat, he instead reached down inside and accidentally got stuck. Stuck in the tight space with no way to get out, he suffocated, with the official cause of death declared as positional asphyxia. Kendrick's parents refused to accept the official version of events. They didn't believe that their young athletic son could have met his end trapped inside a rolled-up wrestling mat. But if Kendrick's death wasn't accidental, then what had happened? The Johnsons suspected that their son had been killed by fellow students Brian and Brandon Bell. Brian and Kendrick had been friends for many years, though they had once had a very public falling out that ended with a scuffle on the school bus about a year before Kendrick's death. But according to friends and classmates, they had since made up, though they had drifted apart a little since Kendrick quit the football team. And even though there was enough evidence to prove both Brian and Brandon's alibis, the Johnsons were determined to have the Bell brothers take the fall for Kendrick's death. The day after Kendrick was found, Reverend Floyd Rose of Valdosta Southern Christian Leadership Conference was approached by a Johnson family member and asked to run an independent investigation into Kendrick's death. He agreed to help, and along with the SCLC, he also had Lee Touchton, the interim secretary and member of the NAACP Legal Redress Team, lead the investigation. In June 2013, with the financial and administrative help of the NAACP and SCLC, the Johnson family arranged for the exhumation of Kendrick's body for an independent autopsy to be performed by private pathologist, Dr. William Anderson. During this second autopsy, Dr. Anderson disputed the official findings and determined that Kendrick died of blunt force trauma to the neck. The discovery also raised suspicions that Kendrick's organs had been removed and replaced by newspaper by the funeral home, prompting outlandish rumors of some kind of organ harvesting ring. However, according to the Georgia Board of Funeral Service, to do so was not best practice, but didn't violate any kind of law. In October 2013, when confronted with the new findings, federal investigators commissioned a review of the autopsies and determined that the first, carried out by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, was more credible. The Johnsons requested a coroner's inquest in the hopes of reopening the investigation and reclassifying Kendrick's death. Their request, however, was denied. After Lowndes County ended their investigation, the NAACP and SCLC continued their own extensive investigations. The SCLC reached the same conclusions as Lowndes County, that Kendrick's death was a tragic accident. This conclusion did not sit well with the Johnson family, who wanted the NAACP and SCLC to not only state unequivocally that Kendrick was murdered, but to publicly name the boys they believed were responsible. Unable to find closure, the Johnson family decided to go on the offensive and started to make baseless accusations against the Bell brothers at their rallies and on the Kendrick Memorial Facebook page. Lee Touchton, in following up on information provided to her by the Johnson family and their attorneys, discovered that both family members and attorneys were lying to her and the media about many aspects of the case. Touchton then resigned from the NAACP, in protest at their continued involvement with the Johnson family. Touchton then began working with Reverend Rose and the SCLC, who investigated Kendrick's death again, and concluded without a doubt that Kendrick died accidentally. The scuffle that Kendrick had with Brian Bell, a year before Kendrick's death, was enough of a reason for the Johnsons to set themselves on a warpath against the defenseless brothers. At the time of Kendrick's death, Brandon was on a school bus to a wrestling tournament, along with dozens of other witnesses who were able to verify his whereabouts. Brian, on the other hand, was captured on CCTV in class, on the other side of campus. Despite the evidence to the contrary, the Johnsons have continued to assert that the Bell brothers had something to do with Kendrick's death. Their reasoning was that because Brian and Brandon were the sons of an FBI agent, they had help in covering up Kendrick's alleged murder. The Bell household was subject to an early morning raid, where the brothers' phones, laptops, and cameras were seized. Police could find no evidence that they had anything to do with Kendrick's death, but the damage to their reputation was severe. After a supporter of the Johnsons got in touch with Florida State University, they withdrew their offer of a football scholarship to Brian Bell. A judge later ordered the Johnsons to pay the Bells' legal costs, totaling nearly $300,000. The Johnson family's outrageous claims did not end there. During their rallies and on Facebook, the Johnsons have claimed that not only are the Bell boys responsible for Kendrick's death, but the Lowndes County Sheriff's son, sometimes they say grandson, is also somehow involved. But the sheriff does not even have a son or grandson. Of course, the Johnson family continued to spin new and more outlandish conspiracy theories to support their claim that Kendrick was murdered, despite the overwhelming evidence stating the contrary. 7 years, numerous investigations, and 3 autopsies later, the Johnsons are still convinced that there is more to their son's death than meets the eye. They were so convinced of a cover-up that in 2015, they launched a $100 million wrongful death lawsuit against 38 defendants, including the owner of the funeral home, multiple law enforcement, city, and school officials. What happened to Kendrick was tragic, and even though the mystery surrounding his death was unraveled, the pain and sorrow caused by his untimely demise not only continues to haunt his family, but also everyone who was wrongfully accused of his alleged murder. So, what are your thoughts on Kendrick Johnson's death? Do you think there could be any truth to his family's claims of a cover-up? Or do you think this is all an unnecessarily long and drawn-out case of misguided rage? Thank you for watching, and we hope you found our video interesting. Like, comment and subscribe for more fascinating unsolved mysteries.